anyone you're sitting down for the conversation with is someone you've had some kind of contact with before. It's not either you've had a chat with them and said, oh, shall we sit down and have a conversation, or you've had an email exchange or whatever. I'm not assuming that you've walked into a room and there's a person sitting there who you've never heard of before. So there's been some kind of connection, however weak. So it may be just it may be as simple as an email or a contact or whatever, but there's going to be some kind of connection. If there isn't, then you're more kind of in the invitation phase. Would you like to have a chat? But I made the invitation, didn't I? I said, who'd like to have a chat and explore that? And Simon put up his hand. So the invitation has been made.
Just to make the point, or clarify the point, this is what over the phone.
Absolutely, yeah. And I often do this kind of thing over the phone, and it works equally well. And you know, being live in person has advantages and disadvantages. Being on the phone has advantages and disadvantages, or Skype or whatever. But the intention, the focus on service and connection and all that stuff. I mean, when I say focus, I'm not thinking about it. It's just I know before I even go in, that's what I'm up to. So it's more about what isn't on my mind than what is. Does that make sense? All right, so I'm going to have a conversation with Simon. I may break out from time to time and talk to you guys or invite questions or whatever. But aside from that, we'll be pretending there's a third wall here. Okay? Simon, good to see you. How's it been since we last spoke?
Good. Smoother. I think since we last spoke, we had some time together, and I was in a bit of a storm at work, and we spoke about that. And I remember going back to work and after that weekend, and everything being calm, really calm, and to the point where I felt almost detached from it, looking in on it, sort of with a smile on my face. You know? So yeah, it's good. And you know that's continued actually. Things have got come out of that sort of stormy patch. Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear. What do you attribute that calmness, that kind of distance, or I'm hearing a kind of gentle, healthy detachment. What do you attribute that to coming out of the storm? What do you attribute that to?
Obviously, let's sort of thinking about it. It's funny, I was, one of the art directors I worked with in the agency sort of said to me, and this sort of helped me come out of it in a way, as well as your conversation, said, Simon, it's only bras. Now that won't mean anything.
Do you want to set some context for that?
The account I work on is called Triumph, and not the motorbike, the underwear.
Yeah.
So, and I was obviously walking around with this, very serious face on, and he said, Simon, it's only bras. That's it is.
Well, and I really like that too, because there's an acknowledgement that it's so, like, I can be like that, I can make things really serious. Make it seem like it's so important, and when I'm thinking it's serious, it feels serious. And the moment I see that it's not as serious as I thought it lightens things. Yeah. Oh, great. So the reason I wanted to have a chat with you is the sense I had when we spoke before was that they're really you're feeling that there's something you'd like to bring into being in your life, and comes up and that sort of thing. Does that still make sense to
It
you
does,
as a
totally.
thing to do?
Yeah.
So, well, first of all, what are some of your thoughts about that? You know, now that you've had some, you know, that things have become a little more peaceful and that sort of thing.
And I still, you know, and this is why I stuck my hand up, because I have this sort of loop, my own little hamster wheel, what it is I want to bring into being, as you put it, and it's a conflict I have whether it's jumping straight into clarity practitioner type coaching role, sharing this understanding, or whether I go out more on my own from what I'm doing currently, which so something like setting up a sort of a business, helping people, businesses, individuals, consultants sort of set up their own websites and that sort of thing. So and I think about that because I think I could do that now quickly, and then I sort of go down the road of right, okay, let's get what the, you know, let's sort of work what that would look like and what the service would be, and I go all the way down this road, and then I think something stops me, and think, well, actually, what I really want to do, you know, is this, but then I think, well, that will take longer to do, and you know, to actually sort of share this understanding, that might be a longer process. Whether I could do this now.
Can you help me understand
Yeah.
something? What I heard, what I'm hearing is there's this thing you'd love to do. That would be a longer process, but that's what you'd love to do.
Yeah.
And there's this thing that you could do right away,
Yes.
but it's not the same as the thing you do.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And so that creates this conflict.
Yes. And I end up doing nothing.
Well, that was my next question. But how come it's either or?
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. I guess I haven't sort of worked out how it could be maybe one of the same, what that might look like.
Well, or I wasn't even saying necessarily they have to be the same thing. But I mean, you eat breakfast, right? You eat dinner, right? But you don't have them both on the same plate at the same time. They're two different things, but you don't say, well, I'm either going to be a breakfast guy or a dinner guy. So that was, I wasn't saying necessarily integrate them, I was more, help me understand why it sounds as though those two paths, that you've been seeing them as mutually exclusive until now.
Yeah, and I think the reason why that is because I hesitate to. I know how much work maybe I go into creating something. So creating two things would mean that my focus and effort is sort of split, and it might be too much.
Okay, well let me ask you this. If I could, and this is kind of a cheesy coaching question, but let me pause you for a sec. So did you notice that when I asked that question about why are these mutually exclusive, Simon got reflective. He said, I don't know. Well, that's kind of the direction I want to be pointing him to, because the habitual patterns he's been going around, that he knows them very well, and they're not, the answer's not in there. So reflective's a good direction in general. Albert?
When you asked the question about where does it come from, the first question you, or the second question you asked when he was describing how is,
Yeah.
did you want him to go somewhere, to his wisdom or somewhere?
No, when I asked him, what do you attribute that
Yes.
to? Oh, that's a good question, Alberto. What was I was just curious, like when, I guess in general, that if I'm asking him what I was trying to do is find out where does he think that comes from? Where did that more peacefulness, greater clarity, that sort of thing that he now has. I wanted to find out, does he attribute that to a deeper understanding of life? Does he attribute it to a shift in his thinking? Or does he attribute it to eating cornflakes for, you know, what does he attribute it to? Because that's gonna, I'm trying to calibrate to him. I'm trying to get on the same page as him. Trying to understand how he sees the world. Now the thing is, with questions like that, you can't ask someone those kinds of questions without their world changing anyway. So I ask a question like that, he gets kind of reflective, things shift and evolve. So it's all both the question of gathering information so I can kind of get his world, and the process of getting connection and him getting more reflective. And it all kind of is happening simultaneously. Can't do one without the other. So, now, here's the other thing. I've lost track of where we got to. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to ask him. Where did we get to, Simon? I kind of went a little bit blank there.
Yeah, so there's these potential two directions. Do they have to be mutually exclusive? My thinking is that not to be more focused on one would be more beneficial rather than sort of splitting my focus. So that's kind of where we were, whether they have to be sort of exclusive of each other.
So, the cheesy coaching question I had in mind was, if we could kind of wave a magic wand, and you get to have everything exactly as you'd like it to be, what would that look like? So, you know, you wave a magic wand and all of a sudden everything is exactly how you want it to be. What would be the first clues you'd get that magic wand had worked?
Yeah, I know where, I know exactly what that would look like.
Oh, tell me more.
I'd be set up, working exactly how I want to be. It'll be from home. So I won't be on a packed train commuting up to London.
Okay, so you're working from home.
Working from home. This newly designed life that fits with who I am, what I want to do. Helping and working with people.
Okay, tell me about what you are aware of about how you're working with people and that sort of thing. And that can be as detailed or as general as you like, but just what your sense of that is at the moment.
So I'd have a bunch of clients that I'd be working with, as I said, mainly from home, meeting up sometimes. And serving them as best I can.
And when you talk about that, are you talking about sharing this understanding?
Yeah.
And that kind of.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I am actually. Yeah. That's what I want.
Yeah. Well, and
That's,
I hear that.
Yeah. The other thing is kind of seems a bit more practical and realistic to me at the moment, because it's I'm doing it already. I'm doing it within an organisation for some huge brands. I could sort of take that and sort of set that up and work with smaller organisations and set that up straight away. I've kind of done that before. So that's the practical option, if you like, but the actual dream is here.
Well, now, what has you thinking that the dream isn't practical?
It's because I guess it's a departure from what I'm known. You know, my sort of identity, I guess, is sort of all wrapped up in this world. You know, and that's what I do. And you know, people will come to me for that sort of thing anyway. So it's a new direction, a new path that I haven't gone down, I guess. So what's stopping me?
Well, I wasn't asking what's stopping you. Here's what I was asking. Because I get that it's a new path, it's a new direction. And I guess that there was a time when what you do at the moment was a new path and a new direction, right?
Yeah.
So my question was, just because it's a new path and a new direction, how does that mean it's not practical?
I think it's the it's that I think you're jumping from earning a good living to sort of it's bridging that gap and managing how that could happen.
Yeah.
So jumping from earning a good living to something that I'd have to start from scratch. It's how that can work. I don't doubt that I can get there, eventually. But at the moment, there's this going to be a gap. I feel there's this gap between one and the other, and it's how that. I think we touched on that before, didn't we?
Yeah, I really like that, because here's what I'm hearing. You've got this thing that you really want to do, and it's so obvious that you really want to do it. And you don't know exactly how you're going to bridge the gap between what you've been doing until now and what you'd love to do. But one of the things I'd love to kind of draw your attention to and kind of honor is the fact that whether you do it or not, you really, really want to. Like that's what I call an authentic desire. And that kind of authentic desire has its own reasons for existing. And I don't know if you're ever going to do that. And I'm not meaning to be a bad coach by saying that. I don't know if the result of the authentic desire is actually going to turn out to be to get you to do that. Or if the result of the authentic desire is merely to get you to take the necessary steps that take you to something that's even more amazing. But I know that that authentic desire has its own reasons for existing. It has its own intelligence, has its own wisdom. So even if we do nothing else, I want to kind of honor that desire, that regardless of the practicalities, regardless of the gap, regardless of all that, that's what you want to do. That's the dream. Like, are you okay with that? That's the dream?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I like that authentic desire thing. Yeah.
So, if you were gonna go, well, you know what, I don't know how I'm gonna bridge the gap, I don't know what the time scale is, I don't know whether I'm gonna be doing my existing work for another 5 days or another 5 years, but whatever, I'm gonna start taking steps in the direction of my dream.
Yeah.
What would the next step be?
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's yeah.
You're not sure?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
I understand. But you know that's the dream.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I get that you're not sure. Would it be okay to take a guess at it?
Mm-hmm.
If you were to take a guess at it, what do you think the next step would be?
So the next step.
And it can be a tiny step,
Yeah,
by
yeah.
the way. It can be like that
Yeah.
small. It can be like, it can be the tiniest step you can imagine.
Well, I guess to start having conversations with people.
Well, okay, so let's make it even smaller. What's the next actual step you could take that would have you move in that direction? An actual thing you, by step I mean an actual thing you could do, a task you could write on a to-do list and check off when it's done.
I don't know why I'm struggling with this answer. Just a little step in that.
Well, you don't have to know. Like, I'm not sure, or I don't know. Is it okay to not know?
Yeah.
Is it okay to not be sure? Is it okay to take action even though you're not certain?
Yeah.
See, that's nice.
Yeah.
How's this conversation going for you?
Yeah, it's great. It's one that I have in my head so often, you know.
Am I there?
And you know, I have those to-do lists. So why I can't answer, you know, I sort of write those to-do lists, and it might, you know, it's like the first thing I got to, you know, get my website up.
No, hang on a second though.
Yeah.
See, I'm not hearing steps, I'm hearing aspirations. I'm hearing aspirations, I'm hearing broad general categories of stuff, like get my website up has a ton of steps in it. Speaking to you as a project manager, there's lots of steps in that.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas register a domain name, that's a step.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it seems to me, well, let's just pause for a second. I'm just going to pause. So what are you noticing? What's occurring to you as I'm going through this conversation?
It's a lot of reflection before. I don't know if it's quietness, but just space.
It looks like some of it's quiet and some of it's there's a mix between the two. So some of the questions I'm asking are having him reflect. Some of the questions I'm asking are having him ruminate. So I'm wanting to move more towards the reflective ones. Johnny?
The watchword for me is gentle persistence. It's not hammering him. It's not if he's not giving you the right answer, but if an obvious right answer is not readily forthcoming from Simon, you're not going after him and chasing him down. But at the same time, and again, I'm using words that are at the extremes, but I don't get the sense he's kind of copping out of answering the questions. But if the answer isn't coming, you're not going, oh, well, if you don't know, just don't worry about it. We can talk about the weather. Like you're following what for you is the logical train, which I guess is based on intuition and experience.
It's based on what's occurring to me in the moment, what's occurring to me to ask. And if I don't get an answer, I'll ask the question again.
Yeah, gentle persistence. And it seems like, at best, something really, really cool comes of it, and at worst, you've just explored a little bit more. But that's a pretty good place to be, and the absolute worst that can come out is that it's an interesting and useful conversation to have been had.
Billy?
Just a question for myself in this. When you were asking the questions about taking the first step, because obviously I'm recognising a lot of this conversation myself. And at the start of it, you had spoken about Simon's habitual patterns and his habitual thinking around all of these things, and the circumstances equal state waiting for the perfect, other times is obviously in my own mind thinking, but it's accepting the fact that the dream is okay to have it in the first place, where that it is something tangible. It isn't just, I can do the practical thing, but this is really my dream. But actually the dream itself is practical. But the toughest thing to do is to take the first step.
Well, I don't know if that's true. I mean, you took the first
step. But in reflection of what I'm saying to you, is the fact that it seems to me just entirely from that taking the first step for Simon is just something.
Well, I don't know. I haven't got that. I don't
know.
have that. I don't really have that in my thinking.
Okay.
I'm just hanging out and curious and trying to find out what's going on. So I'm listening to the things that are puzzling to me.
Yeah.
Like I asked him about what's the next step because I'm curious to know. But if that doesn't come up for him,
what I'm asking you was there an ulterior motive to that question? Is probably what I'm asking you. Is the fact that if you could nudge him in a direction that of movement towards his dream.
Well, what I'm hearing in what Simon's saying, what I'm noticing is that the things he's saying are difficult things to do. Like difficult things to sit down and do, like get my website up. Well, that, once it's, completed and up and all that sort of thing, that's fine. But that consists of a number of steps. It's not like reaching over and flicking a switch. Or start having conversations with potential clients. Again, I'm wanting to for whatever reason, and this is just where my wisdom's guiding me, I'm wanting to ground it in something specific, but he's not getting an answer to it, and I'm fine with that too. Simon?
My urge, and I'm very interested why you haven't gone in this direction, is to ask him his perception of what's stopping him. Is that because you don't want to create a...
I'm hearing all kinds of stuff that he thinks is stopping him. It's all this either or stuff going on. So I don't really want to dig more into that. Though I might ask him at some point. I mean, I feel like he's already told me about several different ways that he's stopping himself. I mean, I know that what's stopping him is a thought that looks like a reality. So that's where I'm wanting to go with him next is to understanding. What's his understanding of what's going on? But I won't tell him that. I'll be a little more. But that's what's occurring to me at the moment is where does Simon think his experience is coming from? So that's where I'm going to go with him next. But I feel like the reason I didn't ask the what's stopping you question is because I feel like he told us already in a couple of different ways. Either I do it practical or I create a total train wreck. It seemed to be the way it was the implication of I can do practical steps where I make a good living, or I can follow my dream and
Yeah, but there's obviously something deeper behind that. Well, this is why I'm asking it, because I know this is my own thinking going on, and it's just like you're pushing forwards, whereas my instinct, which is what I'm questioning, is to actually go back and dig at that. But you're not doing this. I'm just
no, I don't. Like I say, I feel like he told us that already, so I know where I'm going next, but I want to go with others.
To me, they just sound like excuses. Not really, just not being.
Well, I don't really think in terms of excuses so much. Again, what I'm looking for is what's the understanding. So I'm not trying to coach him at the moment.
No.
I'm trying to get a feel for where he's at. I'm just trying to get his world. I'm trying to get where he's at. But let me check. Do you reckon I'm kind of getting where you're at?
Yeah, I think I'm sort of getting where I'm at as well, you know, at the same time. And you know, just in that space there, I think, yeah, and it's me coming in and out of the thinking all the time. And when I'm not thinking too much, I realise it's just thoughts stopping me doing this, and you know, yes, I got a domain name, yes, I got done all these steps, and just get the website up, for example. And I know there are a whole load of steps on my to-do list. You know, not that many are ticked off at the moment, but they're there. So I know what they are. I don't know why I struggle to answer. I think going back a step, it's really the crux of it is, well, hold on. Once I decide which direction I'm going to go in, then I can just start doing it.
Well, let me ask you this. What are you afraid would happen if you followed your dream?
I don't know that I'm afraid of anything happening by following my dream. It's just that, again, it's just navigating that shift from where I am now to there, and sort of doing that transition. That's without going completely broke.
We have a winner. Yeah, why would you do it like that?
Yeah, I'm very keen not to do it like that.
Well, I totally understand that.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. If there were a way that allowed you to navigate the gap between where you've been hanging out until now and your dream, that allowed you to do it in a way that didn't burn your bridges or run the risk of you going totally broke. Would that be interesting to you?
Yes, that's, yeah, totally.
Okay. Second question, what are you afraid would happen if you went totally broke?
Well, I've been totally broke before, so I can't really, I've got responsibilities, and my
makes sense to me. So, does it stand to reason that however you transition to your dream, that you're going to do it in a way that allows you to meet your responsibilities?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. That's what I need to do.
Yeah, and would you not do that? Would you go, oh, you know what, no, what I need to do is be, totally disregard my responsibilities, and would you do it like that?
No. Yeah.
So is it okay to, could we just acknowledge that you're not going to do that? You're not going to disregard your responsibilities, and that you're going to do the things that make sense to you?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I want to really honor that, like, that you're committed to meeting your responsibilities and to any transition you go through, that you're going to do it in a way that acknowledges and takes care of those responsibilities. Good for you.
Yeah. 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 And that can be done.
Yeah. So if you were confident that whatever happens, you're committed to meeting your responsibilities and to making the transition in a way that acknowledges that, would you be willing to commit to bringing your dream to life?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. If there was a way I could support you in that journey and making that transition, would you be interested in me coming back to you with some ideas about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's what I want.
Well, I'll do that. I'll do that, and we'll schedule a time to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Lovely.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So in that last few minutes, what occurred to you in that?
He took his first step.
He
took his first step.
Yeah. What else?
We made another invitation, so the first bit to me was very much like coaching, and I've noticed in my past, I've done such a great job and they don't need to hire you. Like, oh, that was great. You know? So I was curious, well, this is going to be interesting where you go, and it was almost like you went back to a new invitation.
Yeah.
To a slightly different shift in the relationship, potentially.
Well, so I know that in a kind of introductory conversation, I can make a big difference to someone. And I also know that the thing that's going to make a profound difference to them is a significant deepening in their understanding of how life works. And while that might happen in an initial conversation, I want to, if there's a feeling that, now here's the thing, with Simon, I don't have clear in my mind what I might offer him or what might be appropriate. So I want to go away and reflect on it. It's not like I've got something here which I'm, a deck of cards or something. It's like, well, what if I one of these or something? So I'm going to reflect on it. But we've had a couple of conversations now, and there's a nice connection. So if I can see a way that I could deeply support him in that transition, whatever that looks like and however that ends up playing out, then I'll come back to him with something. But so the questions I was asking and the stuff I was doing, my purpose in this was to find out where's he at, get connected to him, help him out. So I want him, when he walks away from the conversation, I want him to have been served in some way. But my main thing is I'm just trying to get where he's at. What's going on in his world? How is he seeing this situation? Does that make sense? Alberto?
There's one thing you did. You pointed to a solution. If you can make that transition in a way that, doesn't. So you are, at some point you pointed to a solution scenario or whatever, and then he would find his way.
Well, and it's so interesting to me. A lot of times when people are talking about a gap or a transition or some dream they want to live into, like, I don't know if that's ultimately the thing that they're going to create or not. And I'm not one for saying, forget about your responsibilities, burn your bridges. Your wife and kids have their own wisdom, don't they? That seems like that. I really honor that he's you know, committed to what he's committed to, and that there are things that he feels responsible for and all that sort of stuff. Now, if we work more deeply together, how he relates to some of that stuff may change. So sometimes I'll speak to people who are, you know, sticking with the day job that they hate because of the wife and kids and needing to provide a certain level of financial thing for them. And it turns out that they've never asked their family whether that's what they actually want. And then they ask them, and their family say, you know what, we'd be happy living on 1/5 of what you earn if you spent a little more time with us. So yeah, Kimberly.
No, I was just going to say, or an alternative scenario that I've had a couple of times is where they see this where they are as, you know, not the dream, that as the dream, and then through a deepening of the understanding, I'm not suggesting this is in any way true of you, they realise that they could have the dream here.
Absolutely, and funnily enough, are you okay with me sharing a little bit of? So the previous conversation that Simon and I had, because he's working as a project manager, and I said, well, to what degree are you sharing and practicing what you've been learning in your current role? And he said, well, not so much, really. I said, well, that's strange, because for me, project management is one of those jobs where you've basically got a playground, a sandbox for experimenting with all this. And that was a big insight to him. Now, there's some people in this room, I expect, who thought they needed to get the dream, and it turns out that actually what they're doing now is great when they don't have a whole bunch of thinking on it. So I'm not, like I say, the dream, when I said to him, the dream, that desire has its own reason for existing. The reason for that desire existing may be so that through the process of deepening and understanding, they get a richer enjoyment of life exactly as it is now. One of the people who came on one of my earlier one-year programs, she said, I had thought that I had to go and set up a coaching business, and now I've discovered I've got this wonderful work that I'm doing now, that she'd already been doing, and I wasn't allowing myself to enjoy it, and now I'm like so grateful, I've got this great job, I love my life, and I'll follow my wisdom about doing some stuff where I live, and that'll happen, but all the pressure was off of her. I think so much people get an authentic desire, which is guiding them in a direction, but then they have a bunch of thought-generated pressure as well. So yeah, I love what you said, Kimberly. Thank you. Sandy.
Well, you just started answering the question I'm going to ask. Actually, this is about how to know that a desire is an authentic desire, so that the dreams are really the dreams, or just another idea which will prove itself that actually that's not the dream.
Well, that's kind of, yeah, it is kind of what I was just saying. What I look for is how the person shows up. So when Simon said, well, I could do this thing that's really practical, I said, well, what would you love to do? Well, I know exactly what that is. Boom, 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 boom. Now, I don't know if that thing, because, well, I know exactly what that is. I want to have a Ferrari and 2 kilos of Coke. And if it's all lit up, I know that there's something there. Now, I'm not suggesting that a Ferrari and 2 kilos of Coke is the solution to, you know, a happy life for him. But that for whatever reason, in that person's world at the moment, that's what makes sense to them. And so I'm gonna align with that energy of desire. Because I know, like, I'll give you a really extreme example. This one guy came on, this was years ago, it's like 10 years ago, came on an NLP practitioner program. And usually people come to these programs, what do you want to get from this? Oh, I want to have a better experience of life. I want to help other people, I want to share my gifts, and this. So I asked this guy, what are you here for? He goes, I basically want to learn how to manipulate people, but get them to do whatever I want them to do. I'm like, but it was like authentic. It wasn't, he was like, that's what he really wanted. So I trusted that. Well, by the end of the program, he'd had profound insights about what he was learning and how it could impact his own physical health. And it had made such a big difference to his physical health that he'd kind of forgotten about the I want to learn how to manipulate people thing, and he was really inspired about helping other people with their health. So I trust whatever gets someone to the party. Like when I was 12 years old, I decided that I would learn guitar because girls seem to like guitarists. Well, I discovered a passion for guitar. I don't know if playing guitar ever got me any success with the females in my life, but I loved playing guitar. That was just what got me to the party. So I trust that with people's authentic desires. There's something trustworthy in that for me. There's something when the difference between, well, this is the thing but what I really want to do, like their whole being, when their whole being is in it, obviously they're going to be speaking from whatever their current level of understanding is. I'm okay with that because I know that as their understanding deepens, everything in the dream is going to recalibrate to that and either become more vivid and profound in the direction they're heading, or it's going to guide them somewhere else. Like I've mentioned to you guys before about Jack and Viv, who came on my program because of their desire to create a coaching practice. But 3 months in, they had an even more profound desire to create a organic soaps and lotions company, which they're out in France doing now. Well, I trusted the original desire because I knew that was going to get them to the next step. Just enough to take the next step, take the next step, take the next step. There's a wisdom there, there's an intelligence there. And so I trust that with Simon as well. Nyla.
A couple of things that I really got a lot of value from watching was one, how you honoured his issue of commitment, not going broke. So really hearing him, so you were in his world and you were his friend. You weren't going anywhere else. There was something very profound about that. And the other thing I gained from Simon's question to you about saying those are excuses, it reminded me of your earlier quote of the Byron Katie, which I don't remember either. I think he's called Mahmood, but that as soon as you've interpreted something, you're not with it. So for me, and I relate to Simon, like if I was thinking, oh, those are excuses he's making, I'm going to lose connection because I've interpreted. I'm not in his world. I'm either assessing or judging his world.
From your world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like it's funny when you use the word excuses, Simon. It was just a kind of, I don't really hear it like that. Like I know that everyone's doing the best they can at their current level of understanding. And from a deeper, like for me, from a deeper level of understanding, I could see everything I was saying last week as excuses, but they look like a reality to me. And as soon as I have a shift in consciousness, they're just going to look like old thinking that had me confused. But so I don't really. It doesn't really occur to me like that. But I'd love to hear your what now that we've kind of had that conversation. What was your experience of that, Simon? How was that for you? And what are any shifts you noticed?
I felt really connected.
Me too.
And it was a really nice experience. And I did go into those reflective moments. Shifts me. Yeah, it's interesting just what you were saying there, because yeah, they're not. I mean, they're not excuses. So I'm glad you're with me on that because yeah, I've sort of lived with these, you know, these kind of issues for a long time, and yeah, it's. I kind of get it. You know, it's just yeah. I also get that I need that bit of help as well.
Sure.
So yeah, there's I feel kind of supported from it. Yeah. It doesn't have to be weighing me down so much. You know?
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, I feel more supported
Oh, good.
from that. Yeah.
Thank you. It was really great working with you and having you up here. Do you guys have any questions for Simon after that?
Yeah, thank you, Jen. I was going to mention it earlier, but this is a good opportunity.
Oh, quick question though.
Yeah.
Well, by questions, I mean questions about the experience or about the session. What I don't want is for you guys to start coaching Simon on what we just did, if that's okay?
No, nobody else mentioned, I don't know whether it's about the resistance. That your general direction of travel was towards the offer, towards the opportunity to make the offer, like, blatantly, if you like. There was, and you were coaching Simon. You were being coached through the resistance. You were getting that.
Well, let me check because what's this resistance you're talking about?
Well, I just noticed that the point when you relaxed, the point when you realised that it was okay, was the moment when it was okay for you to make your offer. If you'd have made your offer earlier, you were in that sort of that in your thinking and in your. I've got this over here. I've got that over there. I've got my comfort and I've got my dream. And there was that moment, wasn't there, when you had you knew it was okay. You could do it. It was okay.
Can I ask you a favor?
Yeah.
Can you direct this to me because you're using a lot of very influential language as you're talking to Simon, and I'm fine with you being very influential. But given that we've just done this demo, I'm really happy with him where he is. So I'm hearing.
Okay, so technically, I suppose.
Okay, yeah, I'm very happy to have a technical.
Okay, so technically, there was the dance, should we say, of you working with Simon, kindly being in his world and allowing him to explore that. Then there was a moment when he realised it was okay. He could take a step and it would be all right. And that was almost the moment where I just sensed that everything dropped and you were then able to make your offer.
Well, yeah,
I would accept it at that point because the resistance had fallen away.
Well, he would or he wouldn't. I mean, here's the thing, when it comes to what we might call selling or making proposals or whatever, one of the, a pretty tried and tested method is to get people feeling really insecure and then offer them a way out of it. So I don't tend to do it like that, but that can work too. I'm not recommending it, but it's pretty tried and tested. No.
An observation of the way that it naturally flowed.
But it made sense to me once what I heard him say is, I want to pursue my dream, go in that direction, however you want to put it, but not at the expense of meeting my responsibilities.
Absolutely. Yes.
And so
yes.
I was kind of like, oh, okay, if you could have both of those, would that be something you'd be interested in? And it was like a huge yes.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm looking for, where they see the way forward as being. Now, here's the funny thing though. I'm all the way through that, I'm not thinking, when can I make a proposal, when can I make I'm just looking to what's the way forward? What's gonna make sense? So for someone else it might be, I had one client actually, I'm having a talk to him, and he's like, he said to me, I've come to the conclusion that what I need is a new paradigm to live from, a new foundation for my life. And he said that to me, I'm like, you're in the right place. Because so I don't know what they're gonna come out with, but But by the same token, I don't feel under any pressure, like I don't want to offer them my help in a next step or a proposal or a way forward until I hear something that makes sense to me. Because I don't want to, and the story that Ankush told us about the guy a year and a bit ago that we had a conversation with, we had the first conversation and we got to the end of that conversation and the client said, so what's the next step? And I said, I don't know, I need to go away and think about it because I didn't know. I didn't know. So I don't feel under any pressure to propose until I have a sense of what's gonna make sense.
And that's the lovely thing about that demo. That's the lovely thing about it was that it flowed so well. And it may not have done. If it didn't, then it doesn't matter.
Sure, and sometimes it doesn't. And the question I asked, would you like me to come back to you with some ideas? Or, that was just the way it occurred to me to ask him more. Would you like me to make a proposal for how we could work together or something like that? That's just asking if it's okay to take the next step with the person. Okay.
That's also allowing him to trust his own wisdom as well. That's the kind of distinction I see between that and selling him something. It's kind of exploring how he sees the world, offering something, and then going, do you want anything else? Is that useful to you? And I know when I started trying to get clients, it was, you kind of like, yeah, I get that. How do we get them to sign up? And it doesn't, I found it doesn't work that way where it's not as impactful. But just serving them and then, because I had a client a few months ago, I had a conversation a few months ago with a guy, and at the end of it, whatever we discussed in that conversation was fine, he was okay. And he kind of even said, well, do you, what's this coaching thing that you do? And I was like, I don't think you need it. Because he didn't, he got clear on what he needed to do next, and he got all his next steps, and that was that. And he gave me a fantastic testimonial, and actually I got more positive feedback of the testimonial he gave me from that conversation than anything else. Because in that and I didn't think of it in that way in the moment, I just did what made sense and what was right for him.
Well, that makes so much sense to me because it's coming from service. And I want to give you a context for this. This may be kind of obvious, but relationship is really important to me, the relationship. And I feel that service is a cornerstone of the relationship. Now, there's a distinction between relationship and approval. So who likes being approved of? It's nice being approved of. One of the traps people fall into is letting their fear of disapproval get in the way of authentically serving someone. But to me, there's a balance. And the balance is, I want to serve someone, and relationship is really important to me. So I don't want to do anything that creeps out the relationship. I never want to do anything that creeps out the relationship. But I'm happy to say something challenging or difficult or whatever if it's going to serve the relationship. And so it's about serving. But I'm also happy to ask for the order or make a proposal or whatever, because I don't care whether they say no or not. I mean, big deal. If he had said, no, I think I'm good to go, I'm like, great, big deal, so what? It's about relationship. The one thing I can't stand is if I'm having a conversation with someone and I'm just trying to find out where they're at, but they've got so much on their mind about, is he going to try and pitch me something or is he trying to sell me something, that they get all stressed out and that sort of thing. I'm like, no, because they think that's coming from me, and so I want to do everything I can to stay in connection and serve, because I find that when I do that, good things happen. To give you an interesting example, I was talking to a potential coaching client. So this is someone who was considering paying me a lot of money to work with him. And we're having a conversation, and he said, well, and we're getting into how did you find out about me type stuff. And he said, well, actually, you really helped my brother out. He said, I said, and he told me his brother's name. I was like, he sort of recognized the name. He said, oh, he reached out to you on Facebook, and he said, not many people have much time for him, but you really helped him out with some stuff. And so that's what let me know you're a good person to work with. Well, on Facebook, I'm not like on Facebook all day doing coaching sessions with people. I was just nice to this person and made some helpful suggestions, but it's about relationship. It's about building relationship, and now a new relationship has been built. Johnny?
Yeah, I think there's some really, really important stuff in there, James, and I would, in the admittedly more limited experience I have today, totally endorse what Kush just said, that service is a pure agenda. And if there's a distinction for me, it's between service and motive, and that service is motiveless. And when I can't remember exactly what David said, but I had one of those moments, you know, when you've relayed the story about going on Sky, and someone was like, great frame control, dude. And you're like, well, I can see why you think it looks like that.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a very, very subtle distinction that, you know, the truth is that the moment at which you said to Simon, would you like to come back to you with something? You know, that might have been the perfect moment to say it, but in a service context, it was also the right moment.
Well, here's the interesting thing, Johnny. The word sell comes from the Latin cellere, which means to serve. So I think that it was ever thus. Over the years, people have got out of touch with what it's actually about. I think it's all about service. Relationship is the context that that service can take place in. And yeah, that's the name of the game. And so my purpose in this demo, like I said, was to serve Simon, to get him in touch with something. And for me, there needs to be connection, there needs to be value delivered, and there needs to be some kind of next step that makes sense to me and makes sense to the client. That's all that's needed, and then we can take it to the next step. I don't need to know what's going to happen once we take the next step. I just need to know enough to take the next step. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I think what's really interesting for me is what's not there. So there's a real lack of urgency. There's a real lack of any discernible outcome that has to come at the end of the conversation. It's just boiled down essentially to making the connection, doing the service, and just basically seeing where that leads us to. And the absence of those things for me is a key distinguishing between that type of conversation and a typical sales conversation, which is much more pressured. The other interesting thing in the discussion was it was almost like a hot air balloon trying to get off the ground, in that you'd send Simon into a reflective place and it would be good, and then you might loosen the tether slightly, and then he'd go back into his thinking again. And the fact that there's no time pressure is wonderful, because what may happen now, back at this, is he goes away and has a bunch of thinking, but because there's no time pressure around it, you're not having to get to anywhere. It's really nice. Just allows whatever's going to unpack for him to unpack over it. So, how long it take?
Well, here's the thing. More than once, I'll get to the end of a conversation like that, and they'll say to me, so what's the next step? And I'm like, I don't know. I think we probably need to have another chat. Because if I don't know, if it's not obvious to me, if I don't have enough to go away and make a proposal, then I'm not going to offer to do that.
But it's really unhelpful when you put that pressure on yourself, because it just pollutes the connection.
Well, that exactly, yeah. And for me, I so enjoy the connection and the relationship and that piece of it, that as long as I'm willing to serve, even if it feels uncomfortable to serve or whatever, as long as I'm willing to say what's showing up for me and following my curiosity, then the relationship stays intact. You know, that was the other thing I was going to say. The questions I was asking about, it was just, what am I curious about? What, because I was trying to make sense of what he's been going through. And I was like, well, how does that, so when he said I can do the practical thing, or I can follow my dream, well, he's implying that following his dream isn't practical. How does that, what gives you that idea? So just trying to find out I was just trying to make sense of it in my world, to get a feel for how he sees it. Did it seem like I had a reasonable sense of how you were seeing things? Great.